Hello and welcome back to the Simple Politics podcast. It's a week where we've had our fair share of animal news, with weasels and emus both featuring this week. And then
what I like about the start of our podcast is that we're chatting beforehand, right? Because behind the scenes we do speak,
yes,
and we're chatting, and Charlotte's like, and then the podcast starts, and she goes, I'm so softly spoken.
I am softly spoken.
Welcome everybody. And then the podcast will finish, and she'll be like, that was. And we'll go back to our not podcast voice.
Do I actually have a different? Because now I'm not sure. Because you can't hear yourself, can you? That's what they say when you hear yourself back and you don't really recognise yourself.
Oh my God, that's true. Because
when you're talking, you're
But you wouldn't recognise yourself because you have a different podcast voice to your regular voice.
Is it like when grown-ups have a telephone voice? Like you're talking to your dad and you're just like, and then he's like, hello.
Hello. Like, yeah. 4329.
Anyway. Hello, welcome to the podcast. I'm really self-conscious now.
I'm sorry.
Tatton, tell us about, because we've been talking about animals this week because it's been a relatively quiet week, but we've also been talking about Christmas, haven't we?
Yes, because we live in a capitalist world where you need to sell things. You need to sell your wares in order to pay rent or that kind of thing. And one of the ways we pay our rent is through selling things to you lovely listener. Listen, there's Black Friday at the moment, and Black Friday winds me right up because it's not fair. Black Friday is an inherently unfair thing where big companies can cut prices of things to a lot less and they can make a loss on it. They don't even need to make a profit on some of the things they're selling on Black Friday because then you go into their shop and you buy other things. It's got a loss leader. And we can't do that. I'm not offering you a single penny off any of our products because we price honestly and we keep our prices as low as possible because we believe in our products and we want people to buy them. I mean, like my books, my actual 2 published books, Politics Were Better and The Breakdown, I love those books. If you buy them from us, I will sign them, I will send them out, and I will love you for it. But honestly, it's cheaper to buy them on Amazon. We can't compete. This is my book that I wrote.
Yeah, that's not fair. That's not fair.
It's not fair.
No.
You know, yeah, and if you buy it from Amazon, then you'll make Jeff Bezos. I mean, Jeff Bezos isn't even the richest man in the world anymore. I think that's Elon Musk. So he's pretty keen on you shopping at Amazon because he must be gutted. I don't know. They must be competitive. Anyway, listen, do check out our shop. We're going to talk about it a lot more between now and the 20th of December. And maybe next week I'll also talk about how annoyed I am with Black Friday. I just want a level playing field, and there isn't one. Yeah. So check out the shop, www.spstuff.co.uk.
There we go. Well done. Good advert. I'm still really self-conscious now, Tatton. I don't even...
Oh, Charlotte.
No, when you said...
Don't worry.
When you said, good advert, I mean, that was slick. That was like a slick, professional,
radio.
Good advert. Yeah. Oh, hang on. This isn't just radio. This is going out on our YouTube channel. Hello, YouTubers.
Hello.
Or are we the YouTubers? Like if someone's a YouTuber, that means we're the YouTubers.
Yeah, we're
so
YouTubers
what are they?
The beloved viewers.
You're just the viewers.
Beloved viewers.
Oh, beloved, lovely people. Of course, you're lovely people.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome, lovely people viewers.
Yes. Right, let's move on. Let's get this podcast properly started and move to top posts of the week. So this is where we take a look at the most popular posts from the last 7 days. Tatton, what was our third most popular post of the week?
Our third most popular post of the week was about International Men's Day. It's a day that I always think about quite a lot because I think sometimes it's tricky being a man. You know, it's obviously tricky being a woman as well. But one doesn't have to preclude the other. And yeah, this year's theme was about role models, male role models. And I thought it was really interesting because I couldn't really think of anyone who I could be like, bang, this one, this guy. But I guess I'm not a normal boy in lots of ways. But then who is? Maybe. I don't know. Like, listen, I could spend the rest of this podcast talking about International Men's Day, talking about role models, talking about what it is to be a man, talking about machismo and masculinity and all of that stuff. But I'm not going to. I'm going to leave it there. Have a look at the post if you want. Do get in touch with me if you want to talk about this stuff. But I'm aware that this isn't a gender studies podcast, so I will. We can crack on.
Okay. But yeah, it is important. It's important to remember the struggles that men do face as well. And I say that as a woman and a feminist. And you know what? I will briefly say, when I was young and did not yet know the full definition of feminism, I was like, I'm not a feminist. I'm all for equality. And feminism is just about women. And it's not. But the reason I thought that was because I was raised by a single dad and saw the discrimination he faced and all the, difficulties that got caused by,
Even at its most pure level, the patriarchy suppresses and oppresses men as well as the obvious.
Exactly. And feminism is about being against the patriarchy. And that's why I then realised I was a feminist. But yes. Men matter. Anyway, let's move on. Diane, what was our second most popular post of the week?
Well, I think we're probably going to spend quite a bit of time on this one because it is the farming protests that have been pretty much dominating the news cycle this week. They actually started back on Sunday because some farmers left different parts of the country. They're coming down from all parts of the UK to descend on London. And on Wednesday, there were big gatherings. I'm not sure we ever got an official head count, but certainly into the thousands of protesters at London and several party leaders there as well, and high-profile MPs. A couple of party leaders and very high-profile MPs were there as well.
Like a clean sweep of the opposition parties, right?
Ish.
Greens there?
Greens were there. Lib
Yeah.
Dems were there.
Yeah.
Obviously, Conservatives were there.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not the SNP.
No.
Because different, isn't it?
Yeah.
But pretty much, Reform were all there. Every Reform MP was there. They were very proud to tell us. So, I mean, Plaid Cymru probably weren't. DUP probably weren't. But pretty much a clean sweep of England opposition parties.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we posted, the post that came in second was just explaining the part of the budget, the change to inheritance tax for agricultural land that has brought this protest about. And there's been a lot of things said out of context and hugely in need of some context being layered back in there on both sides. And it actually came to pass on Wednesday evening that Labour did a whole social media post on all their channels where they tried to lay out in really simple terms, bulleted terms, what they said was the rationale and the truth behind their policy. So just to state, let's talk about Labour and what they think first, and then we'll go on to farmers because that's important. But Labour say they've made a change, which means there's not this special exemption anymore for farmers and farmland when it comes to inheritance tax, okay? But they definitely will still pay less than everyone else, okay? So they say this change will not impact the vast, vast majority of people. It's about estates over 1 million. And actually, if you're in a couple, it'll be estates up to 3 million. And, at that point, you're still only paying 20% inheritance tax, which is half of what everyone else will pay. You've got up to 10 years to pay that back if you need it. they also say things like this is all about their whole rationale, because they don't want to piss off farmers, really. You know, that's not what they want to do. No. But they say the reason they've done this is to close a loophole where wealthy landowners can buy up land and pass it on with this inheritance tax exemption. That was their target. And that's what the policy was about. So that's Labour. Okay. But if you go to farmers, and I think there's a different distinction here. I think there's actually farmers, and then I think there's probably landowners, potentially.
But some of the farmers are tenants.
Exactly.
From the landowners.
Yes.
Which complicates and muddies the water somewhat.
Yeah, because they're thinking of the impact if their rents go up, if land's sold off, if, you know, this is the things that they're thinking about as tenant farmers. But farmers in general, because I live rurally, like I could walk out of my front door and within 5 minutes walk, I could be buying vegetables that have been grown like 2 fields over. You know, that's how rural I live. Nice. And I think there's a lot of perception, especially this week, that all farmers are super rich. And that's not the case. You know, that's just not the case at all. And what they would say is that it's really complicated. Obviously, when you've got a headline figure that says an estate over 1 million, people go, oh my God, 1 million? I'm never going to have 1 million. I'm never going to, you know, pay inheritance tax or whatever. And that, you know, I understand that. But what they would say is that's on paper. Okay, they seem to be asset rich, but actually they could be making 20 grand a year, you know, and they don't want to sell that asset. They want to keep passing it on. So, you know,
and when it gets, if you have to sell 20% of it, then you've got 80% left to farm on. And that can be not viable. Yeah. You need to have a minimum size farm to be making money.
Yeah.
I mean, if I can't call my back garden a farm and suddenly start, you know, selling vegetables from it, there's not enough to live on.
Exactly. But I think more than this, because I still, there is some argument over the figures, Labour's figures and DEFRA figures and all the rest of it. And I think that's a bit of a red herring. I think the fact is, this probably won't affect the majority of small farms and family farms. And I think that's pretty clear. But what a lot of farmers say is if you were going after the big, you know, your Dysons and your people who own absolute swathes of the countryside and you wanted to close that loophole, you could have gone 10 million and above, you know, and still caught all those guys. You know, you could have gone much bigger, potentially. That's one argument.
But then part of the reason why they're doing it is because they need to raise some money. And ultimately, obviously, inheritance tax is only paid when someone dies. So the chances of, you know, it's already, you know, less than 500 people, 500 farms per year, they estimate might come into this. So if you narrow that even more with the really, really, really wealthy guys like Dyson and Clarkson, people like that, then there's literally no point in doing it at all if your purpose, as they say, is to raise the money. Surely.
Yeah, but if you're only after that top percent,
yeah,
you know, it could be higher. But
I mean, the whole thing is like taxing the rich. It's something that we want to do.
Yes.
Everyone wants to tax the rich, but it's hard to find them. I just Jeremy Clarkson said at the protest he didn't really buy his farm for the inheritance, which is interesting. He said, but you said you did. Yeah. And then he said, no, I bought it for grouse shooting, but I thought I'd be unpopular if I said grouse shooting, so I said inheritance tax instead, which would make sense for a person who's famously cares what people think about him.
Yeah.
I mean, his brand is all about really saying something because it's just nonsense. Yeah. It's just nonsense.
I think it is unfortunate that the farmers have people like that as their figurehead, to be honest.
Well, yeah, because he's been scaremongering. I think there's been a lot of scaremongering. And this is what always annoys me with any kind of inheritance tax. Whatever you think of inheritance tax, whether you're against it or for it or whatever, whether it's farmers or normal people, what always annoys me is that There's so much scaremongering. People think it's going to affect them, and it doesn't. With normal inheritance tax, about 4% of estates per year are eligible for it. With the farmers, it's going to be a minority. And again, you might still be against that. I mean, this isn't, I'm not saying whether I'm pro or for inheritance tax, but there's always those just complete misinformation and scaremongering from the people who perhaps will have to pay it and don't want to. And it's not true. And, there were a lot of farmers being interviewed who were like, I'm going to have to do this and that. And then the interviewers would be like, how much is your farm worth? And they were like, I haven't looked into it. I don't actually know how much. And it's just like, why? Like, because
But I think farmers here, and a lot of conversations here are, this is a line in the sand from Labour that says farmers are not a special exemption anymore, okay? And there are farmers who are wondering and are concerned of what next, okay? So this inheritance tax might not affect them, and it may not. They might be a small holding, but it's something that says we were once considered a special exemption for some of these things. We were once almost seen as key workers, like we had in COVID,
But there's still a special exemption in that they pay far less. Most won't have to pay it at all.
And but they're not exempt. Any longer.
Not exempt. They're a very special case.
Yeah.
But also, I think what hasn't got through, and again, I could talk about Labour comms all day, like all government comms in general. It doesn't have to just be Labour. This money that's coming in, £5 billion that they're investing, which is the most they've ever done, apparently. But I say all this. Obviously, farmers are going to be fed up because Brexit has messed things up. Other farmers in the protest yesterday were talking about bureaucracy going up, or that's because of Brexit, etc., etc., etc. Of course, they're frustrated. Like, it's been a really tough time for farmers. But Labour are also doing a lot of good things for farmers, as far as I can tell. But I'm no expert because I do not live anywhere near a farm. I am very much a city dweller, but what just really annoys me is all the talk about inheritance tax and people don't actually know. It's just this misinformation that swirls around.
But I think that does come from an underlying fear of, we might not be as special to Labour as we were. So, agricultural
Still
policy
pretty special.
Might not be, It's interesting, I think. Just the whole mindset.
We still haven't replaced the Common Agricultural Policy properly yet.
No.
So there's a lot of farming decisions yet to come. And I think, it's important to show your strength at the beginning of a negotiation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're not going to do a whole thing on inheritance tax because we need to move on. But there are those who ideologically believe farmers should be a special case, And it's a bit like my brother, the whole way through primary school, always befriended the dinner ladies. And it's always about the people that feed you. And
that's amazing.
I don't think it's like that at all.
I love that. Yeah. Fair. Right, yes, but you're right. We do need to move on because we could talk about this all day. Tatton, what was our most popular poster of the week?
Our most popular post of the week, and I'll be quick here, our most popular post of the week was included in a nightly news package, which never happens. We normally don't even use them. But it went off because of folic acid. The government are now starting a bill that will put folic acid into all flour except for whole wheat flour, because folic acid is really good for people and people don't take enough of it. And this has been a campaign for years and years and years and years and years. And now it's happening. And as someone who's really interested in campaigning, as someone who's really interested in how change happens, I think this is a fascinating story because it's not a sexy one particularly, but it's just change that people have been campaigning for, and now it's on. And the whole point about whole wheat not being part of it means that you can opt out. You don't have to have folic acid enriched flour. You can have, whole wheat flour. Yeah, interesting stuff. number one post.
There we go. Big up folic acid. Right. It's my favourite kind of acid.
Oh, acid house. Acid house is mine.
Mine's citric. There we go.
Oh, yeah. No, it's got good qualities, your old citric. Less good in a warehouse in the 90s, though.
Let's move on to the mailbag. This is the part of the podcast where we answer your questions. And first up, we have a question from Benjamin, who asks, will the farmers' protest make any difference?
Yes, it will. We've already discussed it. It will make a difference because there's lots of farming chat to come, and the government will have noticed the strength of these protests. You could also say it won't make a difference because the government have such a strong hand. They've got every single MP is Labour at the moment, and they can really do what they want. But they will want to carry some public idea, and this show of strength at the beginning of the Labour government's 5 years will be noted.
Nice and succinct answer. Well done, Tan. Safine asks, what was that? A hey?
I'm always succinct.
Yeah. Safine asks, how do you think Putin will respond to the West after the, I don't know how to pronounce this, ATACMS and Storm Shadow missiles have been used?
Again, just really quickly, he will posture, and he's signed a new thing that makes it easier to use nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
But he's not going to use nuclear
hopefully,
weapons.
Yeah.
I mean, it would just be too bad for everyone.
Yep.
Like I said in a previous podcast that there'll be no bombs in Western Europe, and I got one of my brother's emails. He does. He listens very carefully to the podcast, and then tells me exactly what I've got wrong. So, hi, James. I'm not going to repeat that. But he said there are bombs. He said that there are bombs and people do land blows in Europe. The whole world is destabilized by it if Putin gets cross. We've already got North Korean troops fighting in the Donbass or somewhere else in Ukraine. Donald Trump's going to come in and try and sort it. And on day one, he says, Ukraine don't want to start peace talks until they've made some more progress. Putin says he won't talk to anyone until he's taken back the whole of Russia. So it's all a bit of a mess. But Putin's not going to press that big red button. He's not going to do it. I also said, by the way, he's not going to go into Ukraine in the podcast that we did just before the Ukraine. So my foreign policy predictions are excellent.
It's not our strong. It's not our strong point.
No.
It's not our strong point.
Yes. So let's move on quickly. Amy asks, if a UK politician had a criminal record, could they be Prime Minister? I realise we have an uncodified constitution and that if they committed a crime when standing as an MP, parliamentary standards may mean they get sacked, but I'm still not 100% sure.
You can't be an MP from prison because Bobby Sands was elected as an MP during the Troubles in Northern Ireland. He was actually in prison on hunger strike at the time. And he wasn't so people are on his side in Northern Ireland still call him Bobby Sands MP, but he was never an MP because he was in prison at the time. So it didn't count. When you get out of prison, sure, you can be PM. I mean, if you get enough people to vote for you, like if you've done something horrible, it's going to be quite tricky. But yeah, we don't have any rules. You can't be currently in prison. You can't be under, I think, 21. Or is it 18 now? Anyway, like you have to be an adult and you have to not be in prison.
But you can have a criminal record.
But you can have a criminal record, yeah. I mean, we have a deliberately loose system because if people want someone to be Prime Minister, they can be Prime Minister unless they're currently in prison.
It's different from the US where you can be in prison and be president.
Yes, it is. And in terms of parliamentary standards, they get sacked. Yeah, I mean, if you commit a crime and you get suspended from Parliament, there is then a recall petition. And if enough people in your constituency say there's a by-election, then there's a by-election. Because obviously it's not all crimes you go to prison. So you could, in theory, do a crime and then be given a suspended sentence or when you go and clean up motorways, what's that called? Community service or whatever it is. So you'd be suspended from Parliament, and then your constituents could possibly force a by-election. They always have done. Every time a petition's been out there, they've always forced one, and only one was held, and that was Ian Paisley's son, who's also called Ian Paisley, I think.
Jr. Yep.
Ian Paisley Jr. Ian Paisley Jr. is the only MP to have ever survived a recall election, and that's because, Northern Ireland vibes. They do politics differently over there. Yeah.
That's a really good strap line if they do politics differently.
Right. Let's move on to our third section where we take a look at something in more detail. And there's been lots happening this week. It's been 1,000 days since the Ukraine war started. We've had the G20 meetings, but we're going to look at something a little different. This is U-Turn Watch.
Dun, dun, dun.
Your turn, Tatton.
If you want to. The ladies not for turning. U-turn. So first of all, I should tell you that U-turn is what the U chapter in my book Politics Were Better, which is an A to Z, and in it I talk in praise of the U-turn, because we need to. If things change, we need to change. Whereas in our politics, we get so hung up on sticking with things, and if you change your mind, everyone's like, "Nah, you changed your mind." It's like this kind of schoolboy politics. I think to be able to say, "Oh, okay, things are different now." I mean, Keir Starmer has U-turned a lot since he became leader of the Labour Party and the pledges he stood for leader. The Conservatives sold Keir Starmer flip-flops at their conference.
Yeah.
Because I mean, yeah. And, 28 billion staff, and the Conservatives did, HS2 and railway stations. Do you remember when all the railway people went on strike?
Yep.
And we all thought the BBC had done a U-turn over Gary Lineker, but then the BBC won in the end and kicked him out. I don't know if you remember that match of the day, where there was nobody commentating and it was just music, and it got like the highest ratings of any match of the day ever, because everyone tuned in to see what happened, and it was really boring. I really didn't like it. Turns out I quite like a bit of commentary. Oh, and then you had the Conservatives. The Conservatives had a policy that was they would give councils money that would then feed children who are on free school meals. And it was a slightly complicated system. And everyone said, why aren't you just giving them free school meals? And the government went, oh, but we kind of are in a way. And everyone went, no, free school meals for children because you've got hungry children. And the government went, we are doing something. And then Marcus Rashford got involved, and the government went, okay, we'll do free school meals. It happens time and time again, and we're looking at it now. The reason we're talking about it today is the winter fuel payments are coming up. The inheritance tax, we've spoken at length about farms. There's a few areas. The two-child benefit cap.
Yep.
There's a few things that this Labour Party, this Labour government have done that have been really quite unpopular. And they could U-turn on any one of them, but they don't want to. Dan, what do you make of it? Do you think U-turns are likely?
I think on the two-child benefit cap, it won't be pitched as a U-turn, because they have this committee looking into the Child Poverty Action Group that is looking into all this and will report back with recommendations. So they can kind of get away with that, can't they?
But that's how you U-turn.
Yeah.
That's exactly how you U-turn. You get someone to look into it for a day and then come back and go, oh, and then you do it.
But they've always said that they don't, eventually that will be lifted. So it's not really a U-turn. They've just said that they can't do it right now. So surely that doesn't classify as a U-turn. If you say you're going to do something eventually, if they turned around tomorrow and said, yeah, we're going to lift it, that would be a U-turn. But if they do it in a year's time, Diane, is your cat okay?
Yes, I'm sorry about this live action cat extravaganza. Yes, I've got 2 kittens now, and
You got 2?
I've got 2. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so jealous. Sorry, I was just.
Yes.
Anyway,
Sorry.
yes. No, it's fine. But when is a U-turn not a U-turn?
When it's ajar.
When the door is ajar.
Yeah.
Oh. Right.
I don't know. It sounded like a set up for a joke, and I couldn't think of a better one than that.
Yeah.
No,
There we
it was
go.
a joke. I was
A
asking
U-turn's not a
genuine.
U-turn. I mean, a U-turn is something in the shape of a U. You're going one way, and then you turn around and go the exact opposite way. So a U-turn's not a U-turn when you manage to expand the U to be wide enough to show thought and care, maybe. I mean, it would be a U-turn if this government said, do you know what? I am worried. It is cold now, and we are worried that only 75,000 people have got taken up the possibility of pension credits. That means there's a lot of people out there who haven't taken up the pension credits, who aren't getting the winter fuel payments. We are worried. And again, you could frame it as, we wanted everyone who was eligible to get the money, but they haven't. So we are going to spend that money and give it to people. It's feasible. They won't do it because they think it's weak. And maybe they won't do it because they don't think that money's necessary. I mean, whatever. I don't think that they would make old people cold intentionally. Their idea is that it's means tested, and all the people that don't get it can afford to heat their homes. Like, they don't want there to be a gap. But they could U-turn if they wanted, but they won't because it would look weak. And they probably don't want to anyway.
Yeah.
They could U-turn on farming and say, right, we'll make it a 10%. Well, do you know what? We hear what you're saying. We will make it exempt, and we'll tax it in some other way. They could U-turn, and it would be, if they did it today, a U-turn on the 2-child cap. And the 2-child cap is like Gordon Brown was saying, the 2-child. This is not a socialist. Gordon Brown is not somebody, right? Like, he's a centrist. He was Labour, sure, but he's a centrist politician. And he's talking about getting rid of it. And obviously those on the left are talking about getting rid of it. And lots of people aren't members. Like, that's why it'd be such a big U-turn, because they booted people out the party for voting against it. So if they then went, oh no, do you know what, Zara Sultana MP? You were right. We were wrong. That would be quite a lot from Keir Starmer.
Yeah, there's got to be some distance there, hasn't there? There's got to be some, like you said, that they've got to expand that thinking time so it doesn't, appear. But at the same time, I think people should own this stuff. Like, you should normalize being able to change your mind, like you said,
Yeah, to be able to put your hands up and say, I was wrong. And that's what has really, it's one thing that's irked me about Keir Starmer, is that he has U-turned all the time, but he never owns it. He never says, do you know what, I was just wrong on that. I'm really sorry. It's always excuses. There's always, oh, well. And we're hearing this all the time with the 14 years of Conservative mismanagement and the £22 billion black hole, which divides economists, the £22 billion black hole, because lots of economists say there's no black hole, shut up. But they've got this figure that they can keep banging to do whatever they want and to U-turn on anything they want from the campaign, from as recently, literally as the campaign, but also all the other stuff that they wanted to do. Yeah, I think there's this idea you only get one chance. And it's nonsense. It shouldn't be about strength. It should be about trying to do the right thing and saying.
And I think there is strength in admitting that you're wrong, or, as politicians like to say, changing as the facts change. And the thing is, a lot of things, you've got to be responsive to things. You can't just be like, yeah, we're going to keep going. Oh, but there's a meteor coming towards us. It doesn't matter. We're still doing this. We're not going to divert funds.
What's the film where they where it's
Don't Look Up?
No, Don't Look Up. Don't Look Up. Yeah.
Like,
I was thinking about Aerosmith and Bruce Willis.
Yes.
Then just the last thing I want to say on this, because I know we've got to move on, but the last thing I want to say is that you turning too much can be a problem. Even if we're all saying you should be able to say, oh, my mistake. If you're constantly saying, oh, sorry, then there might be just a lack of faith in your judgment.
Yeah, that's fair.
So too many U-turns can be problematic. And I think that's what the Conservatives were going for when they're going for Captain U-turn, which is what Boris Johnson called Keir Starmer. Captain Hindsight, and all of these things. They were hoping he had made so many U-turns that the Labour Party would turn on him. That's what they were going for. But turns out it wasn't the case. Or maybe just the Conservatives were disliked so much by so many people that no one really noticed.
Right. No time for U-turns. We're going straight ahead into the crystal ball. So we've talked about what's currently happening. What is coming up over the next week, Diane?
Next Friday, there'll be the assisted dying debate. Now, Tatton's going to cover a bit more about this in videos that will be coming out in the next few days. It's going to be a really emotional one, really emotional. And it's absolutely right that MPs talk about this, and it's the right place to be doing it in Parliament. And we just know it's going to be a tough watch, because it will be really heartfelt on both sides.
Tatton, what's in your crystal ball?
I mean, we'll have PMQs next week. We'll have various bits and pieces next week. But all. I mean, I'm going to just double down on what Diane said. Like the focus of the whole week will be on that debate, and it's only going to be 4 hours because it's a private member's bill, so it's going to be really tight. And some MPs are saying that they're mindful, they're interested supporting assisted dying, but they're going to vote against it because this is too cramped. This isn't the right way to do it. We need, for a change this big, a change that allows people to take lives is too big for this framework. So I said it last week. I feel like it's not going to pass. I feel like the momentum is with the not passing side, but there's a whole week and you will hear nothing but arguments on this all week.
So yes, I'm sure we'll talk more about that next week, but for now, thank you very much for listening, and thank you, Tatton and Diane.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.